Hello and welcome to another episode of the AgNext Podcast, where we are always excited to tell you what is next from AgNext. Today we are joined again by our CSU Dean of the College of Agriculture and Science, Dr. Carolyn Lawrence-Dill, to discuss land-grant institutions.
Welcome, Dr. Lawrence-Dill. We appreciate you being on the podcast today. The last time you were on, you had just started in your role as the Dean of the College of Agricultural Sciences. How have you been enjoying the role now that you're nearing your 1-year anniversary?
Thanks for asking, and thanks for having me back. Honestly, this first year has been intense in the best way. It's like drinking from a fire hose for sure, but when you care deeply about where the water's coming from and where it's going, it's also energizing. In ag, we're saving the world, so the work is meaningful. I've had the chance to meet with faculty, staff, students, producers, and other partners who care about agriculture and the future of rural communities. That makes the job not just enjoyable, but really meaningful.
Yeah, and I think you're doing a great job. We've enjoyed having you as our leader, me especially, your...
great support to our team and our research and education and everything.
Yes, and great research ideas and passion is so greatly appreciated.
Well, that's very kind of you. One thing I can say is that I love being the dean because of all of the diversity of things that are going on. I've always been somebody that's sort of a mile wide and an inch deep. And it is so much fun to learn about what's going on. I love the fact that when I hear about what's going on with AgNext and I ask questions, I learn all kinds of things that just expand my mind.
Yeah, we've seen you all over the state, right, in agriculture farms and a lot of places, and I think that's the mission of the university, and that's one of the things that we are going to talk about today is to our topic, which is the land grant institutions, right? So Colorado State University is a land grant institution, same as your previous institution, Iowa State University. I think we all have been in other land grant universities. Can you just take a moment and describe what it means to be a land grant institution? Land grant universities are built to believe that anyone who wants to college education should have an opportunity to attain to it. I think that's one of the foundations. Can you just go and let's have the conversation? I'm a foreign person. I came from Brazil, and I often get questions: what is a land grant university? Yeah. When it started, what is the purpose? What is the mission?
So I'm going to start with CSU and then sort of broaden out to land grant universities. One of the things that I like to tell people, because I think it's true, is that at CSU and other land grants, the entire university does agricultural work because the complexities of problems involve chemists, economists, sociologists, engineers. These people are outside of our college, right? We have problems that if we want to solve them, it's not just us in ag. And so in our college, we have people who understand the challenges deeply and who can build teams that solve problems. But the entire university works on agriculture at CSU and more generally. So land grant universities, they were created with a pretty radical idea for their time that higher education should be accessible to everyday people, not just elites. And not just abstract education either. We're talking practical, applicable knowledge in agriculture, science, engineering, and the liberal arts. So what's liberal arts? You probably didn't expect me to talk about liberal arts today. So liberal arts is a broad-based approach to education that emphasizes critical thinking, like we do that, right? And communication and problem-solving skills across various disciplines. That's one of the reasons that any land-grant university has, usually they are gigantic colleges of liberal arts. Every student that shows up at a land-grant university has core curriculum in the liberal arts because we want everybody to be solving problems across all of the different disciplines. So that mission at CSU, we execute on that like other land-grant universities with teaching, research, and extension. Colorado State's a little bit special, and one of the special things about it, if you look at the seal for Colorado State, it also lists service. We have 4. The land-grant institutions across the U.S., they have 3. We've added service. And so I think that's a really special part of CSU. And it means a lot to the kinds of things that we do. It's to serve our communities.
That's new to me. I didn't know about this. That's cool.
Oh, yeah? I think it's really worthwhile. Service is really grounded in community impact, because the reason that these land-grant universities were set up was it was so that our new country could actually take care of things that were making sure that people had a livelihood, that the economies in these new states worked, that they really needed sort of the whole package, a university that wasn't just training someone in a very narrow way.
That's excellent. And this all started back in, I think, 1862 with the Morrill Act, right?
So I have in front of me all of my notes, and I had to write all of that stuff down. So, yep, I have all of the acts and the years, so... Yeah, no,
I'm just curious, like, it's if you can... what do you have in your notes that are worth, like, for us to know about it?
So the land-grant universities were established in the 1860s, and it was during a time of massive national upheaval. Does that sound familiar? The idea was to invest in education that would uplift individuals and communities through applied knowledge. That access transformed who could go to college in this country. We're different. First-gen students, rural students, land grants opened the doors, and we still do. Land grant institutions were established through the Morrill Act of 1862. So the Morrill Act was about education, and we've already talked about sort of that part of this. That act was signed into law by President Abraham Lincoln with, again, the radical idea that higher ed should be accessible to the working class, not just the elite. It focused on practical subjects like agriculture, engineering, and what was called the mechanical arts. And Colorado State University was founded in 1870, that's 8 years later, as the Colorado Agricultural College, and became the state's land-grant institution with the responsibility to educate, innovate, and serve all Coloradans, especially those who might otherwise be left out of higher ed. That's our job.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And 150 years later, or is it 250 years? It's a lot of years.
160.
160 years later.
Yeah. That's closer to 200 than
it's
100.
It's a lot, yeah. How are we still delivering this? Are these still the same things we're focused on? Has any of these deliverables changed? And clearly they have, right? As society has evolved and education has evolved and research needs have evolved and service has evolved. How have we changed, and what do you still see as very foundational?
Okay, so we back up just a little bit. So it plays into that. I'll get there. Mm-hmm. The mission from the Morrill Act was expanded in 1887. We're going to walk toward the answer to your question. Mm-hmm. The Hatch Act provided federal funding for agricultural experiment stations to support research. So if I think about this in order, the first thing that came was educate students. And then 1862. And then the next thing that came was, if we're going to educate people on how they're going to improve their practices, we should probably be researching to figure out what an improved practice might look like, right?
Yes.
Sure. So following that, they had the Hatch Act of 1887. Hatch funds still support the research that we do, and I'm looking at two people who are probably on Hatch multi-state projects. Mm-hmm. So the funding that comes in that's federal gets matched by state funds, and there are requirements on that. So that's how at a land-grant university we do agricultural research. Agricultural research is super expensive, and we don't have as much money available for competitive funds as some other areas. So these funds are really important for us to be able to carry forward that mission we were talking about. And then if we jump forward to 1914, the Smith-Lever Act added another essential piece, cooperative extension. That's a nationwide system to deliver research-based knowledge to the public. So what that means is that, so I'm going to back up again. We started with we have to educate the students. We have to figure out what it is that we're going to need to tell them so that they, are able to have the very best practices. And it turns out that information that we learn is not just important for students, it's important for the entire state. And so Smith-Lever was put into place. So you can really succinctly think about these things coming one right after the other. And you can imagine people thinking like, and what do we need now? And then they did that piece.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty cool. Yeah. I've heard stories like, I've worked in a cooperative extension team and everything. And one time I was searching for the history and somebody told me that they were a group of producers at, I think, Utah State. They were organizing field days and they realized there were more people going to the field days for the university to show irrigation system than the football games. They said, well, we should do something about it. We should do something about it to actually share that information with the general public or the producers and things like that. I don't know if that's where it started, some of the ideas, but I've heard this from a person who was in extension for a long time, that the producers were seeking that research that has been generated by the universities, and then the government said, okay, we need to create this extension piece as well. And like you said, share the information with producers and people who are actually producing the food.
So I'm going to make another connection, bumping off of that to football and Canvas Stadium, which is our stadium that's on campus. It's a fairly new stadium. And why we have such an investment in athletics and bringing people on campus. So it may not be obvious to the whole world, but one of the big reasons that we care about those kinds of things is once you get somebody on a university campus and they see some of the cool things that are here, they might want to come and spend 4 years here and send their kid, right? Mm-hmm. So along those lines, we have such an emphasis right now on rural Colorado. And our president, Amy Parsons, is really putting so much effort into ensuring that we have rural kids that show up here and go, hey, this does look like a place I want to be. And one of the things that we're about to do is to have pro bull riding in Canvas Stadium next week. So you can imagine the kinds of things that you can do. That's athletics, right? I mean, geez,
sure
have
is.
You watched bull riding?
No.
So anyway, that's not always something that people think of for athletics, is that it actually is a draw. It is something that is an asset to the rest of what it is that we're doing at these institutions. We're bringing students in so they can see not just who they're going to be when they get out of here, but also the fact that getting there is half the fun.
So that builds into the next question I have, which is how do we stay relevant given this sort of foundational, education, then research, then extension, but very focused on practical, applicable training, which, whether we like it or not, is becoming more and more available, right? Not just from land-grant institutions like ourselves, but through other educational avenues. How do we maintain that relevancy? And I think you spoke to it with athleticism, kind of bringing together a larger kind of community experience. But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, so there are a couple of different levels there. So how do we stay relevant? Well, we go after problems that are today's problems, not yesterday's. That is sometimes hard to do. And you'll hear people talk about how maybe they don't like tenure. We'll talk about that a little bit. I mean,
sure.
Feel free to delete this part of the conversation if it goes in a direction that you're like, maybe that's not the thing. But you do hear people talk about, at a university, you have faculty that are going to be here forever because of tenure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's talk about what tenure is, too, just in case we don't delete this part.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe it's useful.
Sure. So what is tenure? How do faculty get tenure, and what does it mean?
So tenure is something that was invented in Germany. And it was invented there as a way to make sure that academics who are experts are not afraid to tell people true things that they learn through their research. Through different people that are in charge of countries, you have a push to go in a particular direction. We see that now.
We sure do.
Yeah. And
so it protects academic freedom.
It protects academic freedom
by protecting the faculty member.
Yeah,
through a tenured process.
And it's a legal thing. You cannot fire a tenured professor without warrant, and you have to go through all kinds of proceedings to make sure, because it's a part of their property, actually, right? They have tenure, they earned it. So that's why our tenure process is so rigorous. And the way that it works is after a number of years, somebody that came in as a faculty member puts together all of this documentation that says, here are the things I've accomplished and why you should confer tenure on me. That goes out for external review to other people at or above that rank, and also who have tenure, who send letters, and then the department votes, and then it goes to the college and they vote, and then it goes to the provost, and it just goes on, right? And the reason is because at any step you can stop it. And the reason that you would want to stop it is because if you think about how much money you're going to expend on a person over their whole career, it's a lot, right? Mm-hmm. So this tenure process, it's painful for people because you have to really, it has to be bulletproof to go through this process. Mm-hmm. But the purpose, it's not just so that people don't have to worry about whether they stay relevant and they, get to go off and do their own thing. And that's not what it is at all. It's to make sure that when we have long-term research, when we have experts, that those people have a long-term career where they can really dig in and change the world. So
and they can speak truth.
They can speak truth that is based on what they publish, and the things that they publish go under peer review. And again, you have people that are in that field that look it over and decide whether something has been missed. I have my last paper right now, just came back, accepted with revisions, sent it to my last grad student who's working on that. And once in my entire career, I have had something returned to me that was accepted without revisions. And what that tells you is that when you have other experts look at what it is that you're publishing, they're going to see holes in it. And if you're going to get that thing published, those holes are going to be filled. Yep. And so... and
every time it makes it better.
I think that's true.
No, it's painful, but it makes it better.
Yeah. And sometimes it's just how you describe something that it wasn't clear, right?
Yes.
And we have to make our research findings clear to others so that they can step there and move farther.
Sometimes you're just looking at that same thing over and over and over, and you miss something that somebody else is going to take a different look and add to your research or make a better comment or something like that.
Absolutely. And so let me just bring in, since we're talking about the land-grant mission here, we've been talking about research and we've been talking about tenure. People that are going up for tenure, they also have to demonstrate everything that's in their position responsibility, that they've also been killing it in teaching. Mm-hmm. They have to demonstrate that the work that they're doing, either they are making sure the public gets it, or it's actually foundational research that goes on to another researcher that is trying to push it in the direction of improving things for people all over the state, the nation, the world, and improving the economy. I mean, all of these pieces are a part of why the land-grant university works, and more broadly, why higher ed works.
And how we maintain relevancy, right? So I think what we heard you say is we address big challenges. We're able to speak the truth, but also hold accountability through that truth-seeking process and the processes that we have set up internally to hold faculty members accountable, and then peer review.
Right.
Where we clearly articulate the challenge, how we address the challenge, what the results were, and then layered under all of that is the success of our students while they're here, and then when they leave.
That's right. So these pieces, I guess the reason that I wanted to kind of dive to that kind of detail is because these pieces were all set up for accountability. And people that are in leadership, when you have somebody that is not being accountable, there are processes. And so you hear a lot right now about people being frustrated with what tenure is, being frustrated that you see this, it's not quite right, but you see people talking about how tenured professors can't be fired. They can. You have to have people in leadership that really have their eye on the mission and want to make sure that we're going in the right direction. And when there's not a good fit, that we find a way to make sure that anybody that is not able to do this kind of work, that they find a different place where they can be successful. So anyway, I'm not sure that that's actually directly relevant to what we're talking about today, but I think the system matters.
And it keeps the integrity of the system. That's what we are trying to do. I think like the system was created, the land-grant university exists, and I think it's important for these 160 years that we're talking about that people still rely on the universities, that the work that we do here matters, and it's important for society, it started all over thinking maybe more on the food security piece, which is still part of the sustainability. We've changed some of the approaches that we've taken, but I think how important the system is and how reliable it is, and the integrity of the system is important. I think those process is something to make sure that it keeps people can trust the university.
Yes, and those things have been around long enough that the very best faculty expect them. Yeah. And if we want to keep the very best faculty, we have to have these processes in place.
Absolutely. One of the things, Kim, that you mentioned, what has changed, I think what we are doing right now is something that has changed a lot, right? The extension work that was done back in 1914 when it was created, it was probably more a hands-on showing. Today we have tools like recording to a camera, posting this video on social platforms. And what we are doing is we are sharing knowledge about something, about land-grant universities as a outreach. We call outreach not a necessary extension, but this is a type of extension. What we are doing today, we are using this to share knowledge, share information. And I think it's important. One of the things that I was pushing to have this podcast, specifically this land-grant universities recorded, is to show people how important the system is.
Agreed. So the way as a society that we get things done is by having systems and having systems that work in lots of different dimensions, right?
I agree.
So we're super connected too, right? I think not just through the systems that we're talking about and the way that we're doing outreach, but how we're receiving challenges and research questions and the students that we're connecting with and how they're bringing their own lived experiences into the classroom. And it is just so incredible to be inside the land-grant mission and to watch it work, especially when it's working well. When you think about the College of Ag Sciences specifically, what are we doing that's special about advancing the land-grant mission? What makes this college connect to the land-grant mission?
So I'm pausing a little bit because there's a lot, and I'm trying to figure out exactly what pieces that I want to share with you. So I guess I'll tell you the things that are very attractive to me about CSU, and more specifically the College of Ag at CSU. One of the things that's really attractive to me is that the departments we have and what they work on, they are the core of agriculture. There are many places. So if you see a College of Ag at one land-grant university, it is not equal to the College of Ag at some other land-grant university. And part of that is because, like in Colorado, we have different climates, different problems, and so we have different areas of emphasis. It's also the case that if you look across land-grant universities, like they almost all, if not all, started with as a College of Ag and mechanical engineering, something like that, right? Mm-hmm. So there are a couple of ways to look at what has happened over time. Either the College of Ag lost everything and it became other colleges, or the College of Ag has the benefit of being able to focus on agricultural problems instead of trying to solve all of the problems. And so I think about CSU and the kinds of things that we do around here. This place has evolved in a way that we didn't actually try to hold all of the pieces. So for our Ag Experiment Station, for example, there are, I think, 5 other colleges that some of the funds that are from the Hatch Act, we distribute those funds to the other colleges. This place is a place that knows how to cooperate and collaborate. That's something that's really attractive to me. The fact that the College of Ag is really the center of these practical problems, And by design, we are doing all of the things to make sure that the other colleges are really involved. So I often tell people one of our strengths at CSU and our College of Ag is soils. And the way that you become really good at soils is living in a place with really soil. And you bring in all of the experts to explain, what are we going to do with this soil so that people here can produce something, right?
It is really bad.
Right.
It's really terrible.
But we are actually world leaders in this area, right?
Yeah.
And so I feel like that has been super interesting, that this place, which is super variable, if you look at Colorado, the climate, the elevation, everything that goes on in Colorado is like, in this tiny little area, we can grow the best peaches. Yeah. Says a woman who got her PhD in Georgia. They're better than Georgia peaches.
Right.
In this other area, we're going to be the most amazing people for growing wheat. Like something like 60% of all of the wheat grown was developed here. All the wheat grown in at least in the U.S. I'm a plant biologist. My examples are plants. Please forgive me.
We breed the best high altitude cattle.
We
it's just
do.
wild, the differences in research. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So these are the things that are interesting. I've worked in maize and corn for my research career, which is like super narrow. But my PhD is in plant biology, and I came from a place where it was like all of the things in plant biology, and I'm fascinated by plants. I can walk around Colorado and spend all of my time looking at what is it that grows at this elevation, because it's different than if you walk another 100 yards. It's crazy. Yeah. So when you have a place that has all of these different climates, the problems that you work on and the support you have to offer, because you have people living in all these places and these people all have to make a go of it, those are a lot of practical problems that we have to go after. And that's interesting too.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And really meaningful from an engagement and service perspective. And maybe that's the service piece that really shines there, is that there's researchers who maybe didn't apply to CSU because they wanted to be more narrow focused. And you just can't be a faculty member here and really serve the land grant mission. You have to be more open-minded to
there
the
are
work
such
you will do.
Great conversations that go on. For example, there is a faculty member, Kelly Wrighton, who works in microbiome. Yep. That like her orientation started with like soils and plants and things. Now she's working with you guys on microbiomes in the gut of cattle.
She's incredible. Yes. We're working on modifying phages and things with her at the moment.
When you have creative people with expertise, they're interested in problems, right? And they go, oh, I have a tool. I can help you solve that problem.
Yes.
This is one of the cool things about a land-grant university, is having people that are interested. Like I said, in the College of Ag, we organize teams around problems, and we find the expertise in other places. And that's just a really good example of that. Yeah.
This morning I was just touring the core facility, and it's amazing to go like just across the street and see
the microbiome core facility.
Yeah, what those guys can do. It's crazy.
Well, and even that work, if we can pause here for a second. Yeah. Even that work, it's not actually about the microbiome. It's the microbiome work itself is a tool to understand what's going on, to improve how we can produce food and manage natural resources. So, I mean, if you think of this,
and we've got to be able to test it.
It's about purpose. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
You're just talking about the diversity of our state, right? And how diversity is and things like that. And I'm assuming some of the knowledge that you're sharing, you receive them because you recently participate in the annual CSU state tour, right?
Sure.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that experience? How was it? And was it your first time or second time?
It was my first time. It was awesome. Truly. So it's one thing to sit in meetings and talk about challenges, but to go out and hear on the ground challenges, to see what people are doing, to meet with the people in the area, that all really matters. We visited the San Luis Valley. Did you know that it takes 3 years to grow a potato from cell culture to what lands on your table? 3 years. Every single potato you eat.
How are potatoes so inexpensive if it takes
Right?
3 years?
Success, right?
Yeah, it's incredible.
So potatoes are weird in that they accumulate viruses. And so after a seed potato, which is not a seed, after a seed potato is born, that thing by law can only be replicated a few times because it's accumulating viruses, and then it has to go through cell culture, which cures it of all of its viruses. So we have a researcher here, Amy Charkowski, who's our Associate Dean for Research and Grad Ed. She could talk about this way better than I can, but I'm just fascinated by it. And so when we were in the San Luis Valley, we visited Bob Mativi and the Worley Family Farms, and that was fun. So Bob is a CSU alum. He's also one of our carrot reps, which I will tell you what a carrot rep is next, and it's not about, orange carrots. But at that farm, one of the innovations that they made, they decided on their farm that they would set up a cell culture lab. They were one of the very first in the whole U.S. They do all of this. It's amazing, right?
It's very cool.
So
we grow potatoes in Colorado too. We didn't even mention that in our original.
Right. Yes. I mean, it's like a big thing, right?
Right.
So we visited a number of locations, and the San Luis Valley was one of them. So not only are there producers of potatoes there, we have the San Luis Valley Research Center where we have faculty members on site that develop new varieties through breeding so that things that evolve that we end up with as pests, we can stay ahead of them. They also do all of the agronomic work, which is to figure out for any given variety, how is it managed? They're all managed differently, and farmers in the area need to know, right?
Sure.
Every place we went, we did this kind of thing, and then we held an alumni event that night and every night and learned who was there, what their needs were, this kind of thing. So I'll just touch on 2 places we were. That's one of them. The second I'll talk about is the Western Campus. So the Western Campus provides oversight and leadership for the ag experiment stations that are in Western Colorado, Fruita, Orchard Mesa, and Rogers Mesa. It opened in 2019, and that place has all aspects of the land grant mission. So I was talking about the research at San Luis Valley, but here they have teaching, research, and extension, and they include the Western Veterinary Diagnostic Lab and the Colorado State Forest Service regional office. It's
an incredible facility.
It's amazing, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so we learned about what's going on there. It's only been there, again, since 2019, so it's a very short thing. Can you imagine during the pandemic finishing a place? Anyway, so we've gotten back from this tour, and I just want to make a comment on what our leadership is doing. So this tour is a lot of people from leadership at CSU getting around the state. I'm lucky I get to do that because of my job. Not everybody does. Mm-hmm. And since we got back, I have gotten emails from President Parsons about the notes that she took in those meetings asking for follow-up on this problem or that problem that came up. How are we going to fix it? Matt Tillman, who's her chief of staff, has also been following up with other people with his list of things that he heard. How are we going to fix this? How are we going to deal with that? It wasn't just a tour. It was actually this, it was extension at a really high level,
mission of a land grant university.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Going and solving problems for local producers. You mentioned the needs of
at the highest level of leadership, which is, we're just so, I'm so thankful for the leadership that we have. I do want to talk a little bit about leadership.
Okay.
So you're in a leadership role. You're, of course, engaging with President Parsons and her team, but you're also leading the College of Ag. Our team focuses a lot on leadership. So we do a session every week on our Clifton strengths and how we're using them. And so what are your big leadership, what's your leadership advice for those who might be listening? How do you navigate this? How do you keep the land grant mission, forward and focused? How do you motivate big teams that you may not touch every day? What about culture? What about outreach? What are you thinking about as a leader?
So I'll start with what you led with, and that was Clifton's strengths. I am a strategic organizer.
Oh, very cool.
Don't know what that means exactly, I suppose. What it means to me is that when I see something and it looks like a system that is broken, I reorganize the pieces, because I think that things should work, and that if it's just how things are organized, why wouldn't you fix that? And then you have to deal with like other stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So leadership. Something that gets a person into leadership who starts out as a scientist is getting out of their lane. You hear sometimes people that are faculty members talk about, as they are encouraged to learn how the system works, that they're not going to learn that. It should just work for them and they stomp away. Well, I've never had that orientation myself. I encourage people to learn how the system works, because if you know how it works, you can use it, but you can also get around it.
Yeah.
And you can't get around something unless you understand where it's standing, right? So there's a little bit of like a nefarious view here, which is if you understand something, you can outwit it. And that is, to me, a part of leadership, is trying to figure out, when do you use the system and when do you have to figure out how to change the system? And that takes effort and time. Early in a person's career, I would say that it is hard to spend your time that way, and that's why mentorship matters, is for somebody else to say, you don't know it yet, but you need to know this piece. And here are all the options you have on this next step, but this one will get out of your way faster. So I think mentorship, it matters. And I think spending time getting leadership training matters. Early, I felt like I had to learn everything myself by making mistakes. And it turns out you can also learn from other people's mistakes.
Better.
It is better. So I guess at a place like, you cannot come up with a place that is more complex than a university. And a reason is because you have all of the faculty members there doing research, and they better understand what's going on in the world in their little space better than has ever been documented before. And when you tell them that you want them to do something differently, they know better.
Yeah.
So learning how the system works and how to fit what you know better into that system, it matters. So it takes it feels like extra time, but it's not extra time, because once you've accumulated enough of that information, everything works better and faster.
Absolutely. And I think those are great skills, especially when we're thinking about how higher education is going to have to pivot and change, which we are in a time where processes may have to be reorganized, and strategies may have to be rethought to truly deliver on those very foundational pillars of research, of education first, research and extension. So
I really appreciate that comment. I think if we think about the purpose of our work, and then we redesign the systems so that they are purpose fit, what we'll find is that at the time that anything was put in place, it made sense. But things change. And so the way we do things has to change. So I really think this is an ongoing thing. We feel like in this moment, because it's us, that we're busy here making change. But I'll bet if 50 years ago you had this same conversation with the dean, it would sound very similar. Oh, these are challenging times. Things are changing. Our systems need to. They would say the same thing.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Excellent. I think the last question is figuring out systems, changing systems, doing research in complex areas. That's what we do, right, Kim? Like in the case of AgNext, we study sustainability in animal agriculture. And my question is like, why it is important that universities like CSU are supportive of this kind of research? What are your thoughts on that? Well,
it tracks with the mission. So one of the things I know you ask is about like, how do you define sustainability, right? That comes. And the reason that's such a great question is because sustainability is in so many different dimensions. It's about being able to have enough resources to continue. It's about trying to figure out what policy should be to support people. And it's about having enough in your financial bucket to be able to do what you need to do, right? So I guess the thing that I would say is that on this topic of sustainability, I love that word because it really talks about, in one succinct way, all of the things that we're trying to do at the university.
Yep.
It sure does. It sure does. Thank you for being here, giving us an hour of your time, especially given your leadership role and your busy schedule. And then thank you all for joining us on another episode on the AgNext Podcast, where we always talk about what's next on AgNext. Please follow us on Facebook, X, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And if you have comments, suggestions, or feedback that you would like to give us, please send an email to agnext.colostate.edu, and we'll do our best to answer you as soon as we can.